I teach at the mosque, 1 o'clock every Sunday. Come. We are live. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Welcome everybody to the Safina Society Nothing But Facts live stream, which airs Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, give or take 52 minutes or not. I'm here with guest on my right, Brother Ramon from Pennsylvania, and Abdul Qayyum from Australia. We have some very nice Australian friends. Now, Abdul Qayyum, let's start off with your story, because today we're talking about dawah to European, to essentially like the European culture, European people, European-based ethnic groups. It's another way of saying to whites, right? And I have no problem with saying whites. It's not a curse word to me like some people in the woke world. Everything from the woke world, study it very well and throw it in the garbage, okay? Maybe one or two things they got right by accident, okay? Iblis not has to stick some truth in every falsehood, right? But other than that, we have no issue with that. But that's what we're going to be talking about, because they have a unique challenge, and those converts have unique challenge. But before I get to that guest, let me talk to my other guest who's in person. Abdul Qayyum, what is your story exactly?
Born in Australia. Parents are from Africa who migrated from India.
Zimbabwe and Mozambique, Musa bin Baik. They're Indians who went there in the early 1900s, correct? For work or whatever, trade, whatever.
Yep.
And so East Africa is populated by these Yemenis and Indians. And anyone who knows Tanzania, knows East Africa, will know this for sure, that the Muslims there tend to derive from Yemen and derive from Bilad al-Hind. Okay, then you guys, do you lose Urdu?
Yeah, I can't speak Urdu.
You speak only what?
English.
English and Swahili.
No other language.
No other language.
Our family speaks a dialect of
Muadhan Mozambique?
Urdu, but I couldn't tell you what it.
Okay. So pure English.
Yep.
And do you go back? Those East Indian or East African Indians, do they go back to India and visit, or is it lost, cut off?
Not often, but yes, still visit. Yeah.
Okay. And relatives and everything.
Relatives.
Good. So now your family moved to Australia.
Correct.
Which part?
Brisbane.
So, okay, you got to remind me now. Australia is like this.
Yep.
Brisbane's on the east.
That's right. So,
What are the other main cities? Melbourne.
Sydney, Melbourne, Perth, and Tasmania, and Canberra.
Where is Sydney?
Sydney would be about a 1-hour flight south of Brisbane.
East side.
Yes.
So east side, that means when we fly from Jersey, we go to the West Coast, Canada or LA, depending on your flight that you're taking, Vancouver or LA. You're taking another long haul across the Pacific Ocean. Then you cross into the Indian Ocean, right? Wait, Indian? No, all through the Pacific. You're on the Pacific the entire time. You're over like 12 hours over water. It is insane. 14 waters flying over water. If there are not 300 other people on the plane, you'd think this is insane. I'm never doing this. But 14 hours, you're flying westbound, completely jacking up your clock, your mental clock. It's like you skip a day or you advance a day. I can't even remember. But 14 hours, you're over water. And then you land in Sydney, Australia. Gorgeous area. Now, Brisbane is north of Sydney. And then Melbourne and
West.
Perth are on the west coast.
West of Sydney.
West coast.
Yeah. Not West Coast. Central.
Oh, I didn't know anyone lived in the central. I thought the central was just like kangaroos and
It's all coastal.
yeah.
You've got Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne. Another 3 hours west is Perth.
Okay, beautiful. So this year, believe it or not, it was between, because I usually take a tour in the spring, right? This year it was between Australia a third time, because I've been there twice already, or Malaysia the first time, and it looks like it's going to be Malaysia this time around, or Indonesia, right? So we'll have to see. But all that Pacific Ocean, Indian Ocean stuff, it's amazing. You go to those countries, you're like in another world. It truly is another world. Is our guest ready, Omar? Today, ladies and gentlemen, we have an incognito guest. Islam is a very political matter these days. It's very touchy for a lot of people. And so when a Muslim is working, for a company, they sometimes need to be incognito about their public opinions about Islam. Is sometimes you may have some crazy person look you up, and then as soon as you said something that they don't like, everyone's political, everyone has an opinion, and then they might not do the deal with him. So our guest today is actually the second time he's been on this program. He was on the Safina Society podcast way back during COVID. We had a great discussion. And today, going to bring on an unnamed, influential personality of European descent, American, and there's another country that I'm just not going to mention just in case. But here we go. Welcome to the program, ayyuhal unnamed guest. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you for having me on.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Let's get to our topic today. I want to put something out that just flashed by my mind this morning. I saw recently couple posts, couple articles, couple videos about some Europeans in America. I guess just European Americans or white Americans, saying that really all they want is to go back to having marriage, to having kids, to keeping their culture alive, right? I thought to myself, you know what? We wouldn't have to take over your culture, but we could actually do it. We could help you do this. Muslims know how to stem this kind of death of society that we're witnessing here. When I say death of society, literally population plunge. Muslims know how to do this. You only have to do certain things and avoid certain things, right? So my first question to you is, how open is the white community to recognizing that Islam pretty much knows how to stem the tide of population decrease, right? And that, maybe they ought to take a page out of Islam. I'm not even going to say be Muslim, right? Just why don't you steal a page from us and see how it works?
Well, that's a great question. Well, I think it's kind of multi-layered. So first of all, I grew up, in a Christian denomination, both grade school, high school, all white town, basically 95% white. And, Christianity, basically led to liberalism, even before like the early 2000s, I think, because embedded in Christianity is the belief that Jesus will forgive all of your sins.
Yes.
And, there are some kind of many Christian denominations who, try their hardest to, encourage to lead like a righteous lifestyle to their followers. But at the end of the day, that kind of doctrine basically, doesn't prevent anyone from leading, an ultra hedonistic lifestyle. And, and again, that's just not the only thing. I mean, in Christianity, a lot of people they find the idea of the Trinity kind of confusing. There's many contradictions in the Bible. It's kind of hard to read through. There's no real kind of real world application. And it's very difficult, even when I was in Catholic or Christian school, to find people who wholeheartedly believed in the Bible 100%. So Islam, you're absolutely right. Islam can solve these problems and has solved these problems for different societies, but there are several, barriers to entry for white people to converting to Islam en masse, and we can get into some of those. We've been here for quite some time, but I think that you're right in that Muslims have solutions to this in general, but when it comes to applying them, helping Indo-Europeans apply them at any group level, there are several barriers to entry for that.
Yeah.
And I think that even at the top, all the way down, as Islamic leadership, we can only really kind of put the finger on it. But since we don't have any research or very little research on this subject, a lot remains to be discovered. So
I would venture to say that on paper, a lot of these solutions are easy to understand. But I would venture to say that avoiding drugs and intoxicants, avoiding a type of purely hedonistic lifestyle, committing yourself to a set of people which we call your family. I truly only believe that this is only possible if Allah settles your heart, because the temptations of the world are so great. Like, what would cause a man who really believes that his life he only has a few more years to live, to not go and be hedonistic? What would cause a woman not to go do the same thing? Okay. Except that it's either in the past, you didn't have any choice. Like people were stuck, but in the present, you're not stuck, right? It's very easy for any one of us to go and live a hedonistic lifestyle. You don't even have to be great anymore. You don't even have to be rich anymore. All the pleasures of the world are there for you. So it would seem to me that even if what I was suggesting, and let's say I would tell some of these communities, listen, all you got to do is this, this, and this. I don't think they would be able to do it without sakina entering the heart. Sakina enters your heart and literally satisfies you to the point that what Allah has given you is more than enough. That's how you feel. And so I don't know. So that brings me to the question of, if we conclude that there has to be some faith and iman, what are the points of the barriers of entry for European Americans, European Canadians, Europeans in general, of entering Islam?
Well, I think one of the biggest barriers is that we don't belong to a Muslim community. And you have an influx of people converting to Islam for the last couple of months, and this is going to continue.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that one of the big problems is that only a very thin slice of these converts are going to be able to pull off assimilating into an existent Muslim community and immersing themselves in a completely different culture and whatnot. B, mitigating the relationship with their family and non-Muslim community.
Mm-hmm.
We've tried this. Masajid have tried this time and time again. And the thing is, like I said, only the very strongest, most integrated, most willing to assimilate are the only converts you're going to see take their shahada and then become like these white saviors. And you're not going to be able to get all these people in there, and the rest of these people who take their shahada are just going to drop off because you're trying to fill the gap of this lack of community and collectivization with basically religious instruction, and that's usually what masajid usually provide. And high level, graduate school level religious instruction.
Mm-hmm.
It's a square peg for a round hole. When you look at other communities that have converted as a group, whether that's the African American Muslim community or the Tzotzil Muslims in Chiapas, Mexico, or Islam in Spanish, they took a collective approach.
Mm-hmm.
So when someone converts to Islam, they already have an uncle or an aunt or a cousin or a sister or a brother, or even someone in their community who's already Muslim. And even if they don't, Islam already has a presence within their culture. When you kind of propose this idea that we should be doing the same thing for European Americans, the knee-jerk reaction is to reject this idea. And I think, I can understand why people think that's this way. Whether people who are on the left politically or, maybe they're not political at all, they're just very religious, that they think that this is going to somehow divide the Muslim community. But there are several organizations that exist already in the West that help acclimate, born Muslims to the West. Like you have the Syrian Canadian Association, the Pakistani Canadian Organization. There are 16 Palestinian Canadian organizations in Canada alone. And these deal with matters that help people, thrive and survive in their own communities, like whether that's getting them ready for their driver's license, translation services, immigration services, and whatnot. There's no equivalent type of organization to assist just converts in general, let alone white converts. Like what mosque, I'll give you, just an anecdotal example. There was a woman who took her Shahada recently in the United States. And she was really like zealous about it, and she wanted to dive right into the Muslim, but at the same time there was some trepidation. She was encouraged to wear the hijab, and then she was going to school in one city, and then she had to go back home to her hometown, and her mom saw on the road her driving her car, and she lied about her being in the hometown because she didn't want her family to find out. And then when she found out she was Muslim, she found her car and it had like Islamic garb in it. She cut off her tuition, she cut off her rent, she cut off all of her funding to go to university. That's an astronomical amount of money to ask the Muslim community to recuperate when all these masajid are running on shoestring budgets to begin with. So we haven't even begun to think about all of these myriad problems that these converts are going to run into. So, there are other reasons, but that's enough to chew on for at least a couple of minutes.
So a lot of people have a perception of white Americans, maybe not so much Canadians, but as almost free agents. Like they're not really tied down to their family. I know that's just it's a generalization. Obviously, it's a generalization. We generalize that Hispanic families are very tight knit. Okay, we generalize that white families are much more free agents in their life, and they're not so. So, would you? Sounds like you disagree with that. You're saying that they totally need communities and groups when they enter Islam.
Yeah, so this isn't, I'm not going to pin all these problems on the Muslim community. This, it's, like you said, it's inherent in kind of like this Western individualist, like a stand-up, you have to pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of mentality. But at the end of the day, we still rely on families, for all sorts of things. In any case, if they're free agents, it's simply financially unfeasible and practically unfeasible to put that responsibility on masajid, who don't have the time, the money, the resources, or the wherewithal to acclimate all these new converts coming in. Just the anecdotal example I gave right there, you just multiply that by 10, 20. I mean, we don't have the kind of funding for that. That money should be mostly going, we want as lean of a model as possible, to help with these problems, so that, we're not overspending and getting as much done possible. So, even if you have an organization that can help reach out to, these new converts, family members or community members, to increase those bonds, because that is something severely lacking in, in Western society. I think they would appreciate that. And I think, you won't be able to make everybody happy, but if you can, allay the fears of these new converts' families just a little bit, that may prevent them from getting kicked out of the house or getting written out of the will or getting their tuition cut, which is what we should be doing as converts. Like this idea, it should resonate with the, Muslims who are on the political left, who think that, white converts have all this privilege. Well, I would agree with them in that sense, but if that's the case, then our responsibility should be concentrating on improving their relationship with our non-Muslim friends and family, and that's very difficult to do as a single person. If we were to collectivize in any way, now all of a sudden, let's say if you have two white converts that are just married, now you have two people in your sphere, not just one, which means you can have a greater influence on your friends and family. So I think this communitarian approach, it should be taken more than ever when it comes to white Americans. not to be exclusivist to the rest of the Muslim community. You can still be part of the greater ummah, but I think that this needs to occur for them to survive as converts, and B, to improve their relationship with their non-Muslim friends and family. So
yeah, I have a brother who's recently come upon 3 converts recently entered the community that we could say are white middle class converts. One of them, the mother, is extremely angry. Right, the dad's okay with it. Mom and dad are married. Dad's okay with it. Pretty open-minded guy in that sense. The mom was a hardcore Catholic, and she gave her daughter a very, very hard time. And I thought to myself, this is a lot of tension for a person that I know this upbringing. They don't know how to take tension, right? And we don't know what's going to happen yet, but it's one of those things where I think that it's only Iman that could get people through things like this, because we know that, as you mentioned, privileged background, they don't face a lot of tension. They don't face difficulty. This is probably probably the most difficult thing that they've ever had to do. And there is another brother also that is in constant argumentation with their family. So it seems to be that this is one of those things that they have to be the founder generation, or we could say the pioneer generation. They're going to have to go through these hardships. Whereas if you're African American and you become Muslim, this is something in this day and age, it's almost expected, in the sense that there's Muslims in so many different African American families connected to you somehow. But for white Americans, would you agree that this is almost the pioneer generation?
I mean, white people have been converting to Islam, since Muslims have been in the West and before that. But it's definitely increasing. It's going to have to be the pioneer generation. I mean, we're going to have no choice but to collectivize in some manner, or else it's just all going to fall apart. I mean, maybe it would have been better had this person hid their Islam from their family, especially, when there's dire economic consequences. Again, I'm not downplaying, you spoke about Iman, Islamic education, all that is absolutely necessary. I'm not downplaying that whatsoever.
Yeah.
That's necessary, but I think it's not sufficient. Some converts can pull this off, but the more help, we can give them, I think the better, even if it's just giving, the best advice. So I was actually in a relationship where the family was completely opposed to the convert's conversion. And you have to be on your best behavior. We would never bring up Islam or even religion in general. But it's all about having the manners of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his companions. And then over time, inshallah, their hearts soften.
Yeah.
So that way, when you finally tell them, it softens the blow. And you're gonna have to deal with all. I put everyone that around your social network, your friends and family, on a scale of like -100 to +100. -100 being absolutely hating Islam, and +100 absolutely loving it, and then everywhere in between. You're gonna have to deal with all these relationships. So sometimes it's not about help. Getting your mom who hates Islam to suddenly love it. That's not going to occur. Usually that doesn't occur instantaneously. But what you can do is strengthen the relationship of the people who are already on your side. But again, that takes a lot of dedication. It takes a lot of patience. It may take months, years, but inshallah, we've seen. I've been Muslim for a very long time. We've seen people, turn their hearts around by the will of Allah. Go ahead.
I have here Julian Nuskoyak. He's saying that he's a Catholic and he's from a country that has like 0.5% Muslims, which is Poland. And he says it's extremely hard and he's very lonely. I mean, imagine that, Poland, where the immigration of Muslims there is very low, number of Muslims very low. So he's really like completely on his own. He says he's not Catholic, he's from a Catholic country. Catholic background, he said. But he's a Muslim now, alhamdulillah. Then there's Jennifer Friel, says that she became Muslim. Her mother thought that she was a terrorist and started actually going through her room for evidence and things. So this actually brings me to another fork in the road, and that is the experience of left-leaning liberal families and the experience of converts from conservative families. So you could be a type of liberal who is from the East Coast, etc. The challenges that your family puts forth may be totally different than from the conservative. So why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Well, that's a good question. I'm going to say that in Europe, a lot of Muslims don't know this, but the what you call the right is actually divided into two factions.
Yes.
And a lot of Muslims actually don't know about this. You have the establishment approved kind of Zionist right, who are pro-liberalism, pro-Zionism, pro-neoconservatism, and it's not about the fact that their culture is dying per se. It's just Islam, and this side of the right gets all the mainstream attention, all the book deals, all the attention on social media. So to a lot of even mainstream Islamic leaders, they think that this is the only side of the right. There's also the dissident right, who have been almost completely deplatformed, but they make up a large chunk of the European population. Their thoughts on Islam range from neutral to even positive, but their qualm is that they're going to become, in about a generation, hated minorities in their own homelands. So I don't suggest allying with either of these two factions, but what I do suggest is that if you take a communitarian approach to the dawah, this would deflate the argument that Islam would actually decrease the European birth rate, or the birth rate of any non-Muslim country, even if that's Korea or Japan. Because if you have a simultaneous community of Muslims from the native population who are marrying, having families, have their own organizations and whatnot, this would actually increase the European birth rate. This is a solution that we haven't even remotely explored, because there is no European Muslim community to begin with in these countries, which you can pin on the establishment right. So really, the establishment right and the dissident right, they absolutely despise one another. But the thing is, if Muslim leadership doesn't understand that, with their viral tweets and open resentment in the angle on social media, all you're doing is just uniting these two factions, which is what we don't want, because then they're going to end up voting for the same parties, amongst other things. So that's on the right. Go ahead.
Sorry, the dissident right, just to make it clear, the establishment right is, we know, the dissident right being like Nick Fuentes, Owen Benjamin, like that?
Yes, and there are different gradients of how extreme they are. Nick Griffin is another, Keith Woods, Richard Spencer, Edward Dutton, Jean-Francois Garepi. But again, there's other people who feel this way. They're just not as extreme as they are. So it's more of like an underlying sentiment, as opposed to, say, this is like an actual political faction that has any political power. Because these people have no political power. In fact, even if you were to dialogue with them, you might get your bank account closed.
It's crazy.
And we don't agree with everything they say either. But I do feel that we should be at least aware that these two kind of competing sentiments exist. So
I like what Najib Johnson here is saying. He's saying that whenever Muslims have arrived and whenever Islam has arrived in a country, it actually has been the key to preserving, right, those natives, right, the natives people of any, and they're the key to preserving Islam.
Well, if I can push back on that, in the pre-modern era, this was the case. So, you didn't have airplanes, you didn't have, migration was very rare and reserved for the elites, and it was on foot or by animal. So even, in the pre-modern era, you had several European communities that converted to Islam. And a perfect example of that is Crete, which used to be half Muslim, half Christian. So Cretan Muslims were fully Greek. The food was Greek. The dress was Greek. The architecture was Greek. The language was Greek, even though they're very close to the the border with Turkey. So that culture was preserved. Same goes for, there's an indigenous Muslim population in Hungary, even. But now we're in a totally different situation in the 21st century. So we can't really copy and paste the way we did things in the pre-modern era. We need to think of an approach that, like I said, allows these converts, to work on their own issues and develop a sub-community in the same way that other Muslim sub-communities have done so in the West.
You want to hear something interesting? I was recently taking class, and I still take classes myself. And I was taking a class in which the sheikh was talking about the jami'. So the word masjid is any place where people is just dedicated for the 5 prayers. But Jum'ah, the Friday prayer, should happen in a jami'. Okay? And there should be as few as possible in any city. Jami' is the gathering place. Al-Masjid al-Jami', the mosque that is the gathering mosque. So you should have as few Jum'ahs as possible. You should not have a Jum'ah every nook and cranny. But point being is that he said that from the conditions of the Jami', and I'm assuming these are, recommended, not obligatory, but he said that it is built on the construction of the location, on the style of the construction of the location, right? Which was I didn't expect this at all. But it does actually make a lot of sense, okay? And if you're truly doing da'wah and you're not here for a takeover, and you're truly with a pure intention saying, listen, this is the truth, I'm bringing it to you, but I also want you to have it and benefit from it. I don't want any benefit from you. Then this actually makes sense as a precondition. We're going to put it in the construction that you all understand and know and like and prefer, so that you don't feel that you're walking into something foreign, right? So up to now, what we've talked about is the interaction between a Muslim who converts to a liberal white family versus a conservative white family. I want to push this now to connecting the foreign aspect to Europe. Europe has a whole nother dynamic. You're not going to, when you become Muslim in Europe and you want to meet some Muslims, you're not going to meet your dad. You're not going to meet my dad. You're not going to go meet doctors and PhDs from foreign countries. You're going to meet blue-collar people. You're going to meet chefs, cooks, and right? People who don't speak English. Europe is another animal. And the dissident right of Europe views the Muslim not as a potential terrorist, as a complete horde of poor people taking over our country, right? So let's shift over to Europe. Give us your commentary on the European perspective of the white European perspective of Islam. Can we get a
like I said, there's always going to be people who are think that Islam is the culprit. Whether you're talking in the West more generally or in Europe proper.
Sorry to interrupt. I want to before you give your answer, I want to add one more thing. Some of these pictures of what Muslims are doing in Europe and England and stuff, I would remove it from my country. I'm telling you, living sloppily, not even having half a concern of adapting, right? I myself would be like, oh, what are you doing here? Have some respect for this country that you're in, right? Have some effort to live cleanly, to live like us. That's my perspective. If I had a country and a small group of Muslims came over, I would lecture them, right? And I'm like, I'm not accepting this. Like, you're totally making our country totally feel like I'm a foreign country in my own home, right? So just with that, if you can continue now your what you think of that.
Well, the thing is, I can't. What you just said, even though it's true, that's very politically hot in the current zeitgeist. I think the European right doesn't hear perspectives like that from Muslims. Mm-hmm. So again, you have to be careful. You don't want to. You have to walk a fine line. But I would say, like I said, it's basically two opinions. One is that it's Islam. Like, these people are sloppy. These people They don't, they don't care about, the European population. They don't care about integration because they're Muslim.
Yeah.
Whereas another side, it's not Islam that's a culprit per se. It's any immigration, whether that's from Hong Kong or Brazil or even other European countries. It's the overall mass effect of globalization, which drives down wages, which causes harm to the environment, which increases housing costs like several fold, and they don't blame the individual immigrant. It's a manufactured attempt to try to control a population, because if you have a divided population, they're much easier to control if everybody's at each other's throats. So my take on it is, how can you possibly as a Muslim, address these issues without coming across as a traitor to the Muslims?
Yeah.
I think in general, we're really lacking data and research on what the best thing is for Muslims in these dire situations, who have no choice, oftentimes to go, to the West. I think we need to do like a very in-depth economic analysis on what the best thing is given a limited amount of resources, because to house people in Europe is incredibly expensive. And in the meantime, we have people who are extremely dire situations in for example, refugee camps in Muslim countries, who are just living on shoestring budgets. We're not saying that we don't care about the Muslim population existing currently in Europe, but for the time being, what's going to happen in 10, 20 years, when we have more and more Muslims who are in dire situations everywhere, and more non-Muslim Europeans are in dire situations everywhere, and then the blame is going to be shifted on Islam, as we see these kind of establishment right governments coming to power in Europe. So it is a big issue. It's very difficult to address in any Muslim sphere, but I think we need to look at it from a humanitarian perspective, holistically. And like I said, if we implement this approach, if Muslims just simply refer converts to existent organizations that are run by converts, then they can develop their own aesthetic. They can build their sub-communities from the ground up. And then, Islam would not be seen as a religion that would be decreasing the native European population. So, and then you use that as a bargaining chip, for the safety and security of Muslims currently living in the West. But that would be my take on it. So.
What is your opinion about those who say that this is a globalist agenda to shake up Europe and render Europe a weak, nation, etc., a weak continent, and all that talk? Do you give that any credence?
I mean, it doesn't matter what I think about that. I mean, whether you believe it's true or not, it's there are definitely changes that are occurring, and the fact that Muslim countries are going through so much turmoil is definitely exacerbating that, and I think people are starting to realize that. And but to say that it's like an actual agenda from a certain group, I mean, there's evidence towards that, and presenting these ideas are extremely controversial. So you can take from that what you might think, but in any case, it's good for Muslims to be aware that that the overall, if you look at the overall picture, part of it, that picture for sure, is making Islam look as bad as humanly possible. And that's something we should be aware of. But it remains to be seen if we're going to be able to change the game on this subject.
The hard reaction from a lot of these natives. Well, it's weird to say that about Europeans, but and how do you navigate that hatred when you see it?
Well, it depends. I mean, like I can understand where born Muslims are coming from, to a degree. I've never lived this experience. Like when your entire family is Muslim,
Yeah.
and you don't really interact with the Anglosphere, and you kind of live in your own enclaves. And the only Europeans that you see are trolling you on social media. That's going to give you a really bad taste in your mouth and make you think that the entire population thinks this way.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a segment that believes this. There's also a segment that is neutral on the subject. They couldn't care one way or the other. But you also have to be aware that there is a tremendous, also, percentages all across Europe that have a tremendous amount of support, for the Muslim community, in particular in the region where they're being oppressed, and the numbers are absolutely growing. So it's difficult to see that when you don't, come from, European background. But, when you talk to, people in your family and your community, opinions are changing. And not just this, but also the Muslims leading the charge in the pushback against, certain educational agendas. So what you have to do is we don't have any data. I think that's, we can't start making conclusions or even assumptions without data. I think, Muslim think tanks seriously need to do research on what Europeans think about all these particular issues, and then do correlational analyses and focus groups, and then we can sort of start to draw assumptions on where the best way to go is, because all we're doing is we're just basing our opinions of what the entirety of an entire population thinks based on social media and hired actors who are paid tons of money to act antagonistically toward Muslims. That's not an accurate representation. I think we need to really do research before we start making assumptions about if what percentage of people actually think this way. So.
How about the population talk? Is there actual evidence to this, that the European population is just dipping at a rate that can no longer be really reversed? Is that actually true? Are you aware of these population discussions? I mean, it's popularly stated, but that doesn't make it true.
No, if you look at populations in Europe and the West, there definitely is a decline. You have two effects of increased immigration and also declining birth rates. That effect is going to increase exponentially unless something changes. Now, like I said, I'm against any type of involuntary repatriation. I think that's inhumane to do to somebody, especially since they live there for generations, or even if they're just permanent residents or citizens. But even in take for example Canada. I think Canada at the beginning of 2003 during the Iraq War, I think they did a poll. It was like 71% of white Canadians were against the intervention in Iraq, as opposed to maybe 50. I think it was 45% were opposed in the United States. And at the time, Canada had a much higher white population than the United States.
Yeah.
Those numbers are still there, but it's still only I think white Canadians only make up 75% of the population, whereas in 2003 they're 85%. So,
in terms of the direction of the country now, do you think that the woke and the left explosion is sort of dissipating a little bit, and that there's a little bit more of a rise even amongst young people with some of the conservative / dissident side of things? I actually personally am observing a little bit of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a backlash, but again, we're taking our opinions based off social media. We don't have actually real numbers on the subject. If we can't, populate. Yes, I mean, social media, you can tell, how many likes, certain things get, and there's always going to be these two camps existing.
Yeah.
But in terms of the ability to to push back against these type of agendas, there's always going to be consequences, and it's going to take, who knows, if there's going to be a time when there's going to be less pushback, or you won't get in trouble with your job or your university, but that remains to be seen. But there definitely is like a pushback, especially from Gen Alpha,
Yeah.
towards these type of agendas.
I mean, I'm looking at something like the 1980s. The conservative view of the world was the establishment, and the liberal was this type of person that was like a live and let live type of person, didn't follow the rules, right, and wants to indulge, right. We now find this is the exact opposite. Now it's the liberal left is the establishment, right? Like Netflix, all these things, all corporate. It's left leaning as an establishment, right? Tech companies, and now it's almost like dissident conservatives who are the rebels. Netflix is something that is so predictable. Like, it's so predictable that they're trying to almost destroy any possibility of a good family example, right? A person that is marriageable, you will not find on Netflix. A character, a male or female character that is a marriageable human being, right? You won't find it. The guy is either pathetic and the woman is smacking him. Guarantee you. I just said this to a sister recently who commented basically on Twitter that watch every single Netflix trailer. They make sure to put it in the trailer too, not just the movie. Guarantee there has to be an unnatural power dynamic that no man will ever find attractive and no woman will ever find attractive, right? A woman smacking a man, 5'3" woman beating 5 Russian operatives, okay? Someone talking down to a guy. It's repeated over and over and over. So it's like the establishment now is left. But I think rising from the response to that is like, hold on, we don't like this stuff, right? And I'm seeing more and more of that amongst youth. Like, we don't even believe that this is real. This is not how real life is, and we're going to die out soon. And so my question now is that if this is rising here in America, but I think it's taking greater foot in Europe, but it's intertwined with the anti-immigrant racist. They're going to get called racist either way, but in this case, they actually are. What's his face? The guy who just won the election 2 months ago in the Netherlands. What's his name again? Geert Wilders, right? So, are you seeing what I'm seeing here on this? That is actually rising in Europe.
Well, you mentioned Geert Wilders. So the establishment basically, Geert Wilders is establishment right all the way. So any anti-left sentiment is going to be channeled into these anti-Islam organizations and political parties, which spells really bad for existing Muslim communities. So you have to be aware that it's all being funneled into that. But again, you can't fall into the trap of blasting everyone who holds these opinions. And I know, you probably don't do that, but the thing is, Muslim leadership, they end up saying statements that are just going to galvanize both sides into one political party. So like I said, I don't recommend allying with any faction on the right, but I do think that, we just need to be a little bit more, how do you say, especially when it comes to social media, like kind of careful about how we word things. Because, there's still some people who use the term white man as basically a synonym for non-Muslim or Islam hater. And, we can't show our families this stuff. I mean, these people don't have to go home to a non-Muslim family, but, it's really, it's not good. And, even, saying Andrew, mashallah, when Andrew Tate converted to Islam, Andrew Tate himself is half white and half black. He's biracial.
Yeah.
There was someone who I think made like an anti-Islam video, and he was half white, half Native American, and they were calling him a white man. I'm just like, well, if he was a convert, would he then be Native American? Or if Andrew Tate was an Islam hater, would he then be considered white? So I mean, it's all this doing is it's basically becoming a recruiting poster for someone like Geert Wilders.
What would you say is the difference between the establishment right and the dissident right? What's the line there that separates the two?
I would say
Zionism.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely that's definitely one of the huge dividing lines. But also, again, that's not set in stone. I mean, there are some of the dissident right who would agree with that, and but that's definitely a huge part of it. Also, liberalism, like capitalism, also, and and opinions toward Islam. So I mean, again, with the dissident right, there's a wide range of opinions on Islam. Some of them don't like it. Some of them are neutral about it. But with the establishment right, I mean, very few of them will even entertain a discussion with another Muslim, and if they do, they're going to have some ulterior motive. So,
you think Trump straddled between the two?
Yeah, in 2016, yes, that was the case. I don't know if he's going to do the same thing in 2024, but I wouldn't. If I was in, I wouldn't be voting for Trump either. I'm probably looking third party. But in any case, I do have to go. I do apologize.
No problem. No problem.
But did you have any other questions or comments, or in any case?
No,
final thoughts.
Our intention here is to expand our minds, expand our horizons, and try to delve a little bit into this segment of our community. And it's a growing segment, I believe, and it's something that I believe that needs more attention. We have a couple other guests who also keep us up with this. Yeah. Like Ali from Revival Man Maliki Click, who keep us in touch with this, and it's part of our ummah-wide view of our community. Right. To always be in touch. So anytime that you want to come on and talk about something, you just let us know and you pop in, inshallah.
Okay. That sounds great. And like I said, as a final thought, I would be recommending the same communitarian approach to any group of converts, whether that's Japanese, Korean. So it's not limited to, just white converts. We all belong to different societies, and we all have, cultures that we belong to and everything. It's just that we need to let the people see that, Islam is universal to all cultures. So I will let that go. Thank you so much for having me on, Sheikh Shadee.
My pleasure.
And assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. All right, so there you have it. That was an important little step. I view them as almost like digital visitations, where you get to try to see what's happening in that world. Let's now talk about some other things. Vivek. He's out. He's not out. He is not out. If you think he lost, you're making a mistake. Watch the body language when he meets Trump. He's in control. Vivek, whatever you want to say. Okay. It's a cool name. Any name with two V's that's short, it's two syllables, right? It's going to be a cool name. And he's got a strong, hard letter at the end. Yeah, it sounds like a... He went in there, made a splash. The moment it could possibly get into a confrontation with Trump, I know for sure he had... The line is, you do not have a confrontation with Trump. Okay? And Trump also, I think, saw that this guy, he doesn't need to have a confrontation. He's not a threat to him. If you notice, he never talks about somebody who's not a threat. The only person he talks about is DeSantis, because he is a threat, right? And he crushed DeSantis. DeSantis is completely crushed by Trump's antics, okay? Vivek, I think he saw, all right, if I go any further, I'm going to have a conflict with Trump. That's going to kill me. I'm done, right? So he pulled out. He did not pull out. He did not submit because he was defeated. He pulled out because that was the plan, okay? Pulled out because that was the plan. Now he's ingratiated himself to Trump. Trump is very happy that he pulled out, okay? Threw all his votes to Trump. Him and Trump get along. He's going to ride Trump's coattails for the next four years, okay? Whatever position he gets is going to be fine, or no position, It doesn't make a difference. Probably, maybe even better just to be a floating commentator than to actually have a government position. For him, it should be VP or bust. He should accept, and I don't think Trump's going to bring in an Indian VP, right? But either bring in him, he would either take VP or take nothing at all. Don't take some ridiculous cabinet position, right? But he's a float around comment. Everyone will want his commentary. I personally think he's extremely intelligent, but his biggest problem is the racism in the Republican Party. They cannot stomach putting an Indian for president, right? Like, think about this. In 2008, the Democrats the establishment barely tolerated a half-black man as president. And that's supposed to be the party of diversity. That's going to be his biggest problem. But people love him. His talks are essentially Obama, but on the right. Essentially, he's Obama, but on the right. And I think that he's extremely smart. He has a lot of things that a lot of things that you could take good qualities that make him president. But I just don't think that his people will stomach putting him in office. Right? Republicans will not stomach putting him in office. Either way, anything he does now, he's going to be successful, right? If he opens up a rubber band company, he'll be successful, right? Because his name recognition is all over the world, or all over the country. That moment when I'm seeing him and Trump, I'm like, either Trump didn't care at that moment, didn't value this, or Vivek was just in complete control. And maybe we're just making a bigger deal than not on just that 5-second interaction, but that's my opinion on it. All right, here's a question. Did Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, and here I am, Omar at Maqdisit on Twitter, reading the Nas that you asked me to read. Okay. Is it true that Ibn Qayyim said that Ibn Taymiyyah could access al-Lawh al-Mahfuz? Now, by the way, in Ahl Sunnah, we believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can reveal ilm al-ghayb to somebody, right? And it's ilm al-ghayb, essentially, it's all of ilm al-ghayb is only in the knowledge of Allah, but Allah can reveal something of the ghaybiyat to people. People all the time in Islamic history are seeing a vision, and a vision comes true next morning. Or in 40 years. Prophet and non-prophet. Okay? If Fir'aun himself, was he not given ghaybiyat? But he was given it as a punishment, right? To make him scared and nervous and paranoid. Pharaoh himself was given knowledge of the future that would make him paranoid and fall into it. Make it worse for him. Okay? So it's not all this always praiseworthy. He was shown a vision, and it was either his vision or the vision of one of his courtiers. I'm pretty sure it was his vision of a boy of the Hebrews taking his crown. Okay, playing with it. No, wait a second. That actually happened. That physically happened. No, the vision of the Pharaoh was a flame from Palestine, came in the sky, landed in Egypt, and burned all of Egypt. That was the vision of the Pharaoh. Then his courtiers interpreted it as a boy from the Hebrews, your slaves here, will destroy your nation. Okay? Fast forward, Sayyidina Musa is a baby. He's on the lap of Fir'aun, and he takes the crown from Fir'aun and he puts it on his head as a toddler. Everyone laughed, and some of the courtiers said, oh, that might be a sign. So the crown thing is different. That actually happened in the physical. The vision was Fir'aun's vision. So we as Ahl Sunnah do believe that is possible. Okay? Let's read this quote here. وَلَقَدْ شَاهَدْتُ من فراسة شيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية رحمه الله أمورا عجيبة. Who's saying this? Ibn Qayyim. He's saying, I've witnessed from the firasa of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah. وَمَا لَمْ أُشَاهِدْهُ مِنْهَا أَعْظَمْ وَأَعْظَمْ. And what I didn't witness directly is greater and greater. وَوَقَائِعُ فِرَاسَتِهِ تَسْتَدْعِي سِفْرًا ضَخْمًا. And the things that happen of his firasa would require volumes, large volumes. A sifr is like a volume. Okay? Excuse me. We're now talking about Ibn al-Qayyim's quotation on Ibn Taymiyyah's Mukashafat. أخبر أصحابه, he informed his companions بدخول التتار الشام, that the Tatar people will enter Syria. سنة 99 و600. You know, Arabic is the worst. Astaghfirullah al-Azim. I mean, maybe I shouldn't say this because it's the language of the Quran. But quick mathematical recognition of numbers, it's the worst. Okay? So Chinese is the best. So why Chinese are good at math, not just because they study a lot. Because the way they actually pronounce numbers, it makes so much logical sense. Like they'll say 600, 50 tens, 3 ones. 653, right? We say, right? We say 3 and 50 and 600, right? So سنة 99, 9, 90, and 600. You literally have to pause, right? When you hear an Arabic number. Okay. 699. وأن جيوش المسلمين تكسر, and that the Muslim armies will be broken. وأن دمشق لا يكون بها قتل عام ولا سبي عام. Damascus will not have much killing in it, nor will there be much enslavement, sabi, taking slaves. وأن كلب الجيش وحدته في الأموال وهذا قبل أن يهم التتار بالحركة. He says something here about the wealth and وأن كلب الجيش وحدته. I don't understand that line, but in any event, he said Ibn Taymiyyah said that this would happen before it happened. Okay. ثم أخبر الناس والأمراء, then he informed the people and the princes. سنة 702. He informed them in the year 702. لما تحرك التتار وقصدوا الشام, when they left and they intended Syria. أن الدائرة والهزيمة عليهم, that it's now things are going to change and it's going to be against them. وأن الظفر والنصر للمسلمين, that this time, 3 years later, the Muslims will have victory. وأقسم على ذلك أكثر من 70 يمينا, and he gave 70 oaths that this would happen. Okay. فيقال له قل إن شاء الله. People said, say إن شاء الله. Okay. فيقول إن شاء الله تحقيقا لا تعليقا. Brilliant answer, actually. He says, if Allah wills, okay, and I'm saying this for certain, not in hope. Right? So he said, inshallah. وسمعته يقول ذلك. I heard him say this. قال فلما أكثروا علي قلت لا تكثروا كتب الله تعالى في اللوح المحفوظ أنهم مهزومون في هذه الكرة. When people kept talking to him about this, what are you saying? How can you say this, right? I said, stop talking so much to me. لا تكثروا. Don't reply. Stop talking so much. Stop doubting me, almost as if to say, Allah has written this in the Lawh al-Mahfuz that they are defeated. In other words, the Tatars people, in this attack that they're going to have. وَأَنَّ النَّصْرَ لِجُيُوشِ الْإِسْلَامِ, and that victory is for the armies of Islam. By the way, what is one of the wisdoms which Allah Ta'ala reveals such a truth to somebody? Because we feed off his confidence now, right? قال وأطمعت بعض الأمراء والعسكر حلاوة النصر. And he says it here. He said, I put in the hearts of the leaders and the generals the desire for victory. That's one of the reasons why Allah Ta'ala can give a mukashafa to somebody. It's for the sake of everyone else. This is a war, right? Not a death in the family or something, a war. So you're not going to succeed in this war without a great amount of confidence. Okay? I believe this, by the way. قبل خروجهم إلى لقاء العدو. He says, they got this confidence before they went out to meet the enemy. وكانت فراسته الجزئية في خلال هاتين الوقعتين مثل المطر. And he had many specific, this is the general, he had specific firasat. He calls it firasat, we would call it mukashafat, it's the same thing. What's the difference really? A firasa is less than a mukashafa. A firasa is I'm looking, I'm watching, I'm looking at with an analysis using my brain. Mukashafa is like information from Allah, right? Here, this is mukashafa, it's not firasa. He may use the word firasa, it doesn't matter what word he uses, but by the meaning, it's mukashafa, not firasa. And firasat al-mu'min sometimes, firasat al-mu'min and mukashafa become like mixed, almost one, right? But this is so the question was, did he access the preserved tablet? No, he didn't say that he accessed the preserved tablet. Ibn Taymiyyah merely said that he said that this is what's going to happen, confirmed by the will of Allah. And it is that he says that Allah has written in the Lawh al-Mahfuz that that the enemy will be defeated in this attack that they do on us in Damascus. And he's saying that it's written in the Lawh al-Mahfuz, right? Meaning that he is so, does that mean he like read the Lawh al-Mahfuz? Not necessarily, right? I can tell you it's written in the Lawh al-Mahfuz right now that I'm holding a white mug. But I didn't read the Lawh al-Mahfuz because anything that happens is already in the Lawh al-Mahfuz. If you firmly believe that something will happen, then you can say it's in the Lawh al-Mahfuz. It's in the Lawh al-Mahfuz that Sayyidina Isa is going to return, right? Like that's just it doesn't mean I have to have read it, and doesn't mean that I have access to it. Okay? So let me tell the brother, I just read it and replied in the live stream. And we'll go to the live stream and we'll copy the link. All right, let's open it up to comments and questions now. Who do we have here today? So hey, read me a comment or question.
Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam know all the names?
Names of Allah?
It just says know all our names. I'm sorry. Did the Prophet know all our names?
It is said, and it is a sound hadith, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, your deeds are shown unto me. Many ulama have understood from this. He's shown the deeds of the individuals with their names and in specific. Others said the ummah at large. So there's ikhtilaf on that. But from the experience of many Muslims, they do see the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he knows their names. And Allah knows best. You kill a snake in your garden. Someone says, what would happen? What would the meaning of killing a snake in your garden mean in a dream? Meaning somebody near to you and your family. Your garden is your home, and someone near to you and your family has some ill will to you. And you're killing them doesn't mean you killed that person, but you killed the ill will or the harm. So they may have been harmful to you. Now they're not harmful. It could be by awrad that you recited, dua, dhikr, or you stop them. You physically stop them from harming you with words that you said to them, a discussion that you had, protection of some sort, spiritual or physical. Okay. And that the harm now, whoever that person is close to you in your family, could be a cousin, could be an in-law, could be a brother. They can be now in your family and you don't have to worry about their harm anymore. That's one of the meanings for that. Asha'ira affirming, we affirm all the attributes of Allah and we negate what Allah commanded us to negate, which is any attribute that of Allah that is physical in its nature, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not composed of matter, of any physicality, nor is in a location, nor bound by a location, nor in a direction. So we negate what Allah negated and we affirm what Allah affirmed. Okay. Even simply by the fact that He calls Himself the creator of all things implicitly makes us, there's lazim. A lazim is an implication. We have to negate many things. If Allah says He's the creator of all things, that means the creator of time and space. That means He must be transcendent beyond space, right? Because if He created it, He can't be in it, right? He's not dependent upon it. Okay. Yes, go ahead.
I guess in relation to that, actually, this is something Yunus was asked. He had gotten into a discussion with somebody who was trying to refute the Ash'ari position on things, and they had said that how can you deny that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a hand, but then you accept that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can hear and see?
Yeah.
It's the same. On the one hand, Ash'aris say that He can hear and see
without a tool. Allah hears and sees without a tool, without tools, right? He hears and sees without organs. He speaks without an organ. All of His actions occur without an organ.
So in discussions, if you, I guess for a student of knowledge, when someone is confronted with a situation like that, how far are they responsible in going forward with explaining to someone who's refuting that? Do they just explain it one time and point it out, or do they have to keep going back to that person and trying to convince them that they're wrong? What's the responsibility of the student to try to rectify their aqida?
Every time they chance to get it up in a way that's no argumentation. Repetition without argumentation. Yeah. I mean, that's why anytime that I find something beneficial, if I've read it 500 times, doesn't mean everyone else has. So I bring it up again. Repetition without boredom or argumentation. Okay. Okay. Sami Hamdi visited our masjid, but we didn't record it as part of this channel. I think the Prophetic Living team recorded. Sami Hamdi is a very powerful speaker on Palestine. Can a believer have ayn al-Yaqeen and haqq al-Yaqeen, or is that only possible for prophets? No, it is possible. I'll tell you how it's possible for a believer, a regular person, to have haqq al-Yaqeen. Okay. So when we see the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's just in our mind. But when it actually occurs in the world, it's as if you're seeing a sign of Allah right in front of you. Okay. And when does this happen? Anytime that you have one of these statements, conditional statements in the Quran. If you do this, this is the result. If you do this, this is the result. So it's one thing to believe it. It's one thing to hear that it worked for other people. And it's the third thing to live it yourself. Okay? To live it yourself. So I'll tell you a story about a man who was in a great amount of debt. And his bill was due the next day. He went around all day trying to borrow money from people, couldn't get any money. And was literally walking the streets of Cairo like a complete desperate person. He then couldn't even go home. Couldn't even face his family and go home. So he went to a masjid. Went to Isha, fell asleep after Isha. What happened? Everything okay? Okay, no problem. All right. Went there. Fell asleep after Isha. Woke up, spent all night praying. At Fajr, certain circumstances happened, incidents occurred, and some zakah money was brought forth. Exact amount of money that he needed. So that man now knows, not on theory, not that he heard somebody talking about it, but from his own direct experience, okay, that Allah answers the dua of the last third of the night when they're asked with desperation. Okay? Direct experience. That's called haqq al-Yaqeen. So again, ilm al-Yaqeen, knowledge of Yaqeen is, yes, I know and I believe that Allah answers prayers. Ayn al-Yaqeen, I met somebody who said Allah answered his prayers. Haqq al-Yaqeen, Allah answered my prayer. Okay. How do you ask questions? Farhat, you could just ask the question right here on YouTube. Muhammad Sahil says, is there any way of knowing a dream would come true before it actually does? Small example, a friend of mine had a dream he had something he wanted, and a year later he got it. Yes, the world of dream interpretation, if you meet some righteous people who know how to interpret dreams, then you will, inshallah ta'ala, understand, come to learn by talking to them and by living as a Muslim and having experience that this is all true, and that you have to separate between the dream that's from your nafs and the dream that's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are clear ways to separate between the two. Okay? The dream that is from Allah tends to be short, easy to remember, and most times, not all times, most times, it's symbolic. Why? Because in order for Allah to make you know that this is from Him, not you, He puts it in a code that you don't understand, right? So if we just saw true dreams exactly how they were, right, then how would I know whether that's truth or projection from my own mind? Okay, so that's an example of, I'll give you another example, the famous story of Sheikh Muhammad Mitwalli al-Sha'rawi. He saw his father saw a vision of a little bird tweeting, making its noise, singing on the minaret of a mosque on the night he was born. Sheikh Muhammad Mitwalli al-Sha'rawi was born that same night right before Fajr, right? Blessed time to be born. So he said, funny thing is, I saw this dream. No, sorry, it wasn't him. It was his uncle, his father's brother who saw the dream. So when they met up at Fajr in the mosque in the farmland back in the 1900s, 1909 or something, he said, I just saw this dream, right? And I hope it's your son. Maybe something to do with your son. So they told the Imam of the mosque, the Imam of the local mosque, the village there, said, this boy of yours that was just born, your nephew, right? He's going to be a great teacher of Islam. Okay? So now, if the father had seen the dream, everyone would, and he would have seen it literally, said, I saw a great preacher. Everyone would say, yeah, that's what you want, right? You would want your son to be a sheikh. And they would dismiss it. So number one, the dream came to the uncle, not the father. Number two, the dream came in a way that nobody really would imagine that this is what it is. Right? A little bird, okay, singing on a minaret. So it's symbolic. By these obstacles in between the dream and the truth of the dream, it separates from us our own consciousness from the message Allah is bringing to us. That's why dreams are like that. Okay. Every time you make dua after a wird and it often comes true, is it then blameworthy to ask for worldly things? It's never blameworthy to ask for worldly things, but it is blameworthy to ask for worldly things without asking for religion, for spirituality, for nearness to Allah, for protection in the afterlife. Okay? Can you bring on a dream interpreter? They're very hard to get on. Maybe next time we'll get Sheikh subhanallah, his name's skipping my mind, from Dallas, from Chicago, I mean. He's a dream interpreter from Chicago, Darul Qasim. SubhanAllah, I know his Kim. We just had him on. It was a great interview. Okay. Are the fatwas from Dar al-Ifta and Azhar valid? Can they be followed? Sometimes you hear things here and there, and I can't say as a blanket statement yes or no. But I do know that there are many, many, many good jurists in both departments. But also I do see some things that make your head, you could shake your head. Okay. You know what else is amazing is that Sheikh Sharawi himself, as who was saying this here, Osama, he didn't actually want to go to school as a sheikh. He didn't want to go study. Okay, next this person is someone is saying Abrar is there, that Mufti Menk is coming to Dallas. Okay, I hope that for those who like to listen to Mufti Menk, he's coming to Dallas. Never met him, no. Never met him, did not meet him, no. Should one fear from criticizing a ruler if there is danger of prison? Yes. That's one of the, being in prison is one of the things that is allowed to keep you silent. Is it normal to feel body heat increasing while doing Ratib al-Shahir? Allahu A'lam. Abu Bakr and pulsating, thank you. Sheikh Amin Khalwadia, that's what I meant to say. I don't know why his name skipped my mind. He's a dream interpreter. I don't know if he does that publicly, but he's well known to be a dream interpreter. I don't know if that's normal. If in general, when you do an act of remembrance, you are moving, you are inhaling, you are breathing. So if your body temperature goes up, that may be because of that. Lana says, I tried asking Sheikh Amin from Chicago, but couldn't get a hold of him. There's nobody else that I could refer people to publicly. There are dream interpreters that are just private, privately. So I can't, refer them to you. Did you ever meet Sidi Hamza Bushishi? No, I never did. What is the ruling on minority fiqh? There's not minority fiqh. There are fatawa that a fatwa is a license to go against what is the normal ruling. And you have to navigate the world of fatwa very carefully. Lana says, I'm excited for Awailim to start again, mashallah. We are revamping our scholarship program, our online scholarship program. You're not even going to recognize it. It's going to be a complete revamp. It's going to actually become an online, almost like a college. Like you will get educated. Okay. Harun says, why is it that although death is like sleep, sleep is so sweet and death is so intense? It's like sleep in the absence of a physical presence. That's how it's like sleep. The ruh exits the body, but in sleep it's connected, says the Prophet ﷺ. We don't know these things, only what the Prophet tells us, right? But it's connected. Death, it's completely disconnected. But how is it like death? In both cases, you are absent of your physical body. Human being is soul and body and intellect, right? So death, pre-resurrection, of course. And sleep is soul and intellect without body. So you are with your intellect, just like in a dream. You're you in a dream. And you have your soul, but you have no body. Okay? And then resurrection occurs, you receive your body again. Okay? Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Khadija Omar. Fatima King, yes, we're talking about ArcView. Right now, ArcView scholarship track, it's up and running. But we're now going to formalize it where you take courses, you get exams, the courses build on one another, year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, and you're certified by the teachers who pass you. Right now, it's almost like sign up, take whatever you want, whenever you want. But we're going to move away from that. We're going to start actually saying, all right, you're studying with us. These are the class times. And you get like a week. If you missed, the recording will be up for like a week or something like that. So it's more serious. Right. How would I know if I saw a prophet in a dream? You would know. You will know. But sometimes you see a good figure. That's it. You don't know if you saw a Nabi, an angel, a person. It's a symbol of someone bearing goodness. Go up there. When I was a student in school, there is this girl. Her name was Courtney. Could you go on? You see that Instagram on the screen? Can you scroll? Imam Babar is asking a question here. Scroll the opposite way now.
Up or down?
Upwards. All right. What's your question, Imam Babar? Keep going. Keep going. No, up. What are you saying? Keep going. I don't know what the question is.
Yeah, it won't go any farther up.
No, I don't know what the question is, Imam Baba. Why don't you debate Mufti Uthman, son of Farouk? Debate him on what? Ash'aris? What do you think of scholars working for Zionist UAE? The fact that I read the question, that suffices really what my opinion is about it. Well, just to give you a rule, okay. La'an Allahu man a'ana muhdithan. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, anyone doing fitna, the curse of Allah is on anyone who helps them. I'm not accusing anyone of helping Zionists, right? So that I don't get into the weeds on what people said or didn't. I'm just saying that is the rule in Islam. You can't do something wrong. You cannot help someone do something wrong. Okay? Okay? ArcView spring semester started again. Yes, January 28th, all classes start, inshallah. How's Ryan in Yemen? Yeah, he's doing good, studying hard. Is anyone considered the representative of Habib Umar in the United States? Yes, Abdul Karim Yahya and Sheikh Yahya wrote us. Abdul Karim Yahya is in Michigan and maybe one of the oldest of the students of Dar al-Mustafa. Sheikh Yahya wrote us in Allentown, of course. Okay, so Dar al-Rahma in Michigan, Al-Maqasid in Allentown. May Allah preserve them and increase them. Are the madhabs of theology as large as the madhabs of fiqh? Madhabs of theology are under the banners of the madhabs of fiqh. So the Maturidi is the Hanafi aqida, essentially, because Imam Maturidi, he intended to document what he believed Imam Abu Hanifa would have concluded, given the questions that are now coming in at that time. The Malikiyya did the same, and the Ash'ari and the Shafi'iyya both joined or supported the Ash'ari aqida. Okay, And the Hanabila remained Hanabila. No kalam. Neither they criticize it nor they support it. They leave the room. That's it. If you're going to bring these questions that never came in the time of the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba, we leave the room. What do we say about that? You say, Ahlan wa sahlan. You don't have to answer these questions. But it's fard kifaya. It's not fard ayn. It's fard kifaya to answer these questions. When a foolish atheist brings you a dumb question, like can God create a fire that he can't extinguish? Dumbest question in the world. Okay, 6th grade. This was hot stuff, edgy stuff back in 6th grade. Whoa, we can't answer this question, right? It's fard kifaya for a Muslim to swat away these flies. If there are a lot of flies and roaches in the mosque, and you go in the mosque, is it fard ayn on you to squash all these flies? No, it's not. But it's fard kifaya on the Muslims, on the community, to purify the mosque of these rats, rodents, and cockroaches. That's what the Ash'aris did, okay? And the Maturidis did. They took on the fard kifaya of getting rid of these weasels and these rodents and this vermin, okay, who play games with words. That's all they did, play games with words. Okay, here's this, about this. So you're basically wanting the omnipotent, all-powerful to not be powerful. If he cannot stop being powerful, then he's not powerful. Are you playing games with words? Can God close a door that's already shut? Oh, he can't? Because it makes no sense? Or then he can't do it. This is nonsense, right? So it's word games. And the Ash'ari, what they did is let's see how language works. And let's see where is the trick here. It's just a trick, okay? It's a linguistic or logical trick. What is logic? Logic is nothing other than how we understand language, right? If you said a word, that's what it means all throughout your passage. Then don't contradict your passage later on. What ultimately is the request of what you're saying, or the argument of what you're saying? That's basically what they did. Okay. Is Nahj al-Balagha a valid source? You have to get there is a Sunni version of it, and you could read that. Okay, you can read the Sunni version of Nahj al-Balagha. How can one bring non-Muslim neighbors to Islam even though they live next to us for many years? Says Fatima Mahmoud. I've never done it. I can't really. All I do is they very much know that we're Muslim. We know that. We invited them to the family night at the mosque one time. Okay. And then we just be good neighbors. When are you going to have Sheikh Yahya Rodis again? Yeah, we should have him on regularly. Let's book him soon. Okay. So that we can always be close with the Habaib. Okay. How do we explain all the madhahib differing on the way of praying? Says Neelan 3. Why don't you watch the madhab series that we just released on YouTube? Because it shows you that the transmission of the religion came in things that are clear cut with no differences of opinion, and things that are not so clear cut, and upon those the schools of thought differ. Okay. And as long as they used a valid method of interpretation, their conclusions are acceptable. Okay. But if you think about the prayer, these are very minor things. The prayer, standing, bowing, prostrating, what to recite, all this is, we are unified on this. The time of the prayer, how to pray in a group, right? The prayer is the most unifying force in the ummah. That's why prayer has set rules, but flexible at the same time in other things, because it is a unifying force in the ummah. If I go to China right now, okay, I can pray with them. I'm gonna know exactly when the prayer is and how they're gonna pray and what they're gonna say, because it's in Arabic. If I then take a flight from China and I go to Chile, I find a masjid there. Within a few hours, I will be praying the same salah with the Muslims there. If I then take a flight to, now let's say, South Africa, Central Africa, same thing. So salah is the unifying force in our ummah. Okay? It's extremely important to understand that. Have you studied under Sheikh Muhammad al-Yaqubi? Yes, I did, alhamdulillah. A lot of the foundations of our was with him. Aqida. Okay. The adab of how to study. Shifa of Qadi Iyad. Things like that. Lana is saying ArcView Basic started 2 days ago, and ArcView Plus starts on January 28th, correct. What do you think of Shahid Bolson and his views about Muslims criticizing Arab leaders, playing into Western propaganda, and leaders deserve our support? No comment. I didn't really watch the stuff lately. I didn't keep tabs, to be honest with you. Not anything that I didn't want to keep tabs with what he said, but I just didn't keep tabs with what he said. There's a lot of good speakers out there talking and trying to bring benefit on the perspectives, and I wasn't able to keep tabs with everybody. The world turning on the Twitter personality for negating the genocide, the Uyghur genocide. The Uyghur genocide is happening. Doesn't that has to happen the same exact way as the Palestine genocide? Like every single day bombs are going down. But if you don't believe that China is systematically eroding this population, then go research again. We had, remember, Ibi the Uyghur, we used to call him Ibrahim. We had a brother named Ibrahim. He was here in Rutgers as a physics, post-grad. He was Uyghur. He would tell us every Friday what kind of things would happen, right? What was he benefiting? He didn't make any of this stuff up. How did he get asylum? He got asylum to America, right? So he told us stuff that would make your hair stand. Unspeakable stuff. Like soldier would go in Ramadan in the morning and make sure everyone's eating. They would send soldiers to certain parts and make sure no one's up for suhoor. No suhoor. They are literally killing the deen of these people. On top of that, how much the soldiers would then actually sleep with women. Rape them, really. Not sleep with them, rape them. And spend nights there in the Uyghur homes. Right? Ensuring that those women would be basically carrying Chinese kids and totally destroying that family, right? So he's saying these things. That's, to me, the most direct news that a person could possibly get. He fled from it. He fled first to Italy, then he fled here. I mean, so when this guy Hinkle denies it, no, I'm gonna say, like, that's your politics getting involved. He is obviously pro-Russia, China, Iran, anti-USA, anti-Israel. So whatever those guys do, he's gonna be with them. Whatever these guys do, he's gonna be against them. That's not how we do politics. We do politics by the truth, right? That's it. So everyone is now against him, and I'm like, I wasn't necessarily for anybody, but rather whatever's true. If you post something true, good. If you post something false, get blame. Right? I didn't even know Jackson Hinkle is a real person, to be honest with you. When I see an account post that much, right, and content that was, I think, pretty original, the team's researched, right? Like a video from a place there, you don't know where to get this video from, right? So it's obviously a team of people. And I thought to myself that after a while, I thought, this is not even a real person. It's like a brand or something. It's like just until I started seeing pictures of them, right? In any event. The beard in the Maliki school is anything that comes out that you could see. That is clearly a beard. Separates you from having a smooth face like a woman. Okay, so this fulfills the function, the Sunnah in the Maliki school. All right, let's see what else here. How do we practice the Sunnah of being optimistic and having tawakkul, like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, especially when you deal with a lot of negative thoughts and worries. Okay, one of the things that you want to think about is that أنا عند حسن ظن عبدي بي. I'm in the good opinion of my slave. Okay, and so one of the meanings of that is the future. If you insist that the future is going to be positive and good, you are basically saying, I insist that Allah is generous and kind. So anytime that your mind is negative now and says, oh, the future is going to be bad, you're basically saying that I believe that Allah is going to bring me harm. So make a good opinion of Allah through what you believe about the future. Could you scroll up to Instagram, see if this brother continued? All right, what is he telling us about? Keep going. All right, I didn't really understand his question. Is there a ruling on roadblocks during rallies? I debate my friend with this all the time. I'm not I don't see how there's benefit in that aspect of the protest. I can get it if it's a federal government, right? Like the federal government is helping with this. They're implicit. They're involved in it, right? But a regular guy, that's like the Europeans. They're blocking the farmers. The environmentalists are blocking farmers' driveways. And a farmer came in with his tractor and he just bulldozed or just, pushed away tipped over the guy's car. It's my driveway. What are you blocking my driveway for? Right? I applaud that guy. So, what are the must-knows for laymen in terms of theology and kalam? Look, when the mutashabih question comes to you, you don't want to let it sit in your mind. Any doubtful question that's bothering you on the inside, once that settles in your heart, it becomes now an obligation for you to settle your heart. That's how I'll put it for you, right? That's how I'll put it. Once it enters your heart, you have to find a solution. You cannot let a doubtful idea settle in your heart. Okay? That's when it becomes an obligation for you to clear your heart. Okay? I was advised, says Khadija Omar, that is recommended for a woman to make wudu while on her period and to remember Allah. There's no wudu upon haid. You can remember Allah without wudu. There is no wudu. There's no such thing as a wudu without haid. While on haid. No such thing. There is wudu upon janaba. Janaba is different from haid. Janaba is self-inflicted after intercourse. Haid is menstruation. Menstruation is something outside of your control completely. There's no wudu in it. Janaba is in your control. You entered into it willingly, you can get out of it willingly. But let's say before I take a shower for ghusl, I want to go down and have breakfast. I want to sit a little bit. I don't want to take a shower now. I want to go to sleep. You make wudu. You remove the najasa from your body and you make wudu. That is a wudu of protection, not a wudu. It does not allow you to do anything else. And it's only broken by another incident of sexual intercourse. It's called wudu of janaba. It's protection from shaitan. That's it.
Just one question.
Yeah.
What you said before about a lay person addressing, because I was asked this before. What if it's not related to logic-based question, but it's just like maybe about the future or what have you? Say, for example, how do you know what is true? Obviously, you've submitted to
All those questions.
But how do you answer those questions? How would you address that intellectually? Or you just say, do you just seek refuge from Allah because it's the waswas of shaitan?
No. Every question that shaitan puts in the head of a person, or the person naturally thinks up himself because he's a curious person, has an answer. You then just have to know, you have to ask somebody, because the literature, look at the literature. I mean, look at these books. The literature is so vast. Where the answer is to that question, you may not be able to know, right? Every time a car breaks down, there's a reason, right? If my car emits a bad smell, there's a reason. If my leg hurts, there's a reason, right? I can't now go and open up WebMD and start reading Grey's Anatomy and try to find the answer. It's not practical. I was like, hey, doc, it's the knee today. All right, what are you feeling? This. Go do that. Same in knowledge, right? Any person, that's why we have this live stream. Any person that's got a question that, hey, hold on a second, I'm confused. Do logical rules apply to God, right? That means we're binding him by logical rules. So that's a question that comes in people's mind, innocently or from, it's not necessarily from Shaitan all the time, just innocently. Well, the answer to that question is, what is your understanding of logical rules? Logic is how we navigate language. As long as we're talking, we need logic because it's how do we understand words? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has disavowed, or he has disaffirmed contradiction to himself, right? And he said, وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ لَوَجَدُوا فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا. If this book was from other than Allah, they would find in it much contradiction, right? Therefore, Allah himself has negated for himself contradiction. There is no contradiction in his speech, nor in his creation, nor do you pose it to him. Okay? Allah also says, Inni haramtu dhulm ala nafsi. I have forbidden myself, from oppression. Meaning that if you do a good deed, you're going to get its reward in this life or the next. If you suffered something, you'll get compensated for that in this life or the next. That's justice. That's divine justice. He has forbidden himself from injustice. Okay, so then we say, okay. So then, can God do injustice? Because if he can't, then he's not all powerful. No. He has negated for himself certain things. He's negated injustice for himself. He's negated contradiction for himself. So that's the answer to, is God bound by our logic? He's not bound by our logic. He negated contradiction for himself.
I guess the one thing related to that is when someone asked me this, is that sometimes Shaitan comes and places, well, that's what they said, was waswasa about future events. How do you know that that's going to happen? And what if, like kind of this what if scenario? How do you address the what if scenario? Or the waswasa of the what if? How
Like,
do you know it's true unless
give me a specific example. And then you can extract. But it's in the Quran. It's in the words of the Prophet, peace be upon him.
Shaitan will put something in their mind and say, how do you know unless you see it happen actually? Until you know for certain, you have not experienced it. So
The word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, insofar as you believe in Allah, you believe in his promises, right? So then the question is, do you believe in Allah, yes or no? Do you believe in the Quran, yes or no? Right? That's the real question. Because once the answer is yes to that, then everything that Allah promises is going to be true. Right? Whether I can imagine how it's going to be true or not. Right? So you go to the root of the matter. Do I truly believe this is the word of Allah? Yes or no? Now, if I have doubts that's not surrounded by a question, it's just like weak faith, then the solution to that is reciting the Quran with contemplation and doing much remembrance of Allah and stop committing sins. So sometimes it's a spiritual answer and sometimes it's a rational answer. Yeah. That's how we look at it. How do you do Salat al-Janazah in the Maliki school? Very quickly, Salat al-Janazah was essentially takbir, dua, taslim. That's it. Allahu Akbar, make dua for the dead, and say Assalamu alaikum. However, while the Prophet ﷺ was doing Salat al-Janazah, he saw the mercy descend on the deceased. In celebration of this mercy, in praise of Allah, he said, Allahu Akbar again. Then he continued making dua, more dua for the dead. Then more mercy descended upon the dead. So he said, Allahu Akbar again. He exclaimed, Allahu Akbar a third time. Once to open it. Then he exclaimed, Allahu Akbar. Then he saw more mercy come. Then he exclaimed, Allahu Akbar a fourth time. Then he made more dua. Then he said, Assalamu alaikum. So the 4 takbirs of janazah prayer, one was to open the salah. The next 3 came about upon the Prophet seeing mercy. He was like celebrating it, praising Allah for this great mercy that's coming down upon him. Then thereafter, the 4 takbirs became standard to be recited in the janazah prayer. The janazah prayer in the Maliki school is all one thing, dua for the deceased. Unlike like you may hear that from the Shafi'i school, for example, Fatiha, then Ayatul Kursi after the second, then something else after the third, then something else after the fourth. No, it's not like that for us. It's all dua for the deceased, and the 4 takbirs can come at any time in the middle of that dua. Okay, keeping in mind that you are praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the mercy that descends. I believe the Hanafi school is very similar to that. Right. Are you going to Al-Maqasid's Mi'raj gathering? I don't know when it is, but I am, inshallah, bi'idhnillah. If there's no other commitments, I'm going. I try never to miss anything with Sheikh Yahya. Okay. Who is the biggest scholar in Maliki fiqh? It's Rami Nsour. He's the only one who I know who memorized Mukhtasar Khalil. Sheikh Rami Nsour. He runs the Taiba Foundation. Is Sheikh Abdullah Misra visiting MBIC? Yes, this week. This week. He'll be here Saturday, inshallah. What is Reliance of the Traveler about? Reliance of the Traveler is a Shafi'i law book. And it has at the bottom, at the back of it, a lot of wonderful biographies. And the best thing about Reliance of the Traveler is the index. You can look up any subject you can imagine, and you'll see it there in the index. And you just go back to the chapter and verse, that chapter and page there. Okay. All right. Couple more questions. One must know ruling of action before doing it. However, if one has done it without knowing its ruling, would they be sinful? There are a few things that you must know the ruling before you take the action. That has to do with things with financial contracts, meats, and things related to women. Okay? You have no excuse of doing these 3 things without knowing for sure that it's halal for you to do. So you cannot eat meat without knowing and not knowing that it's halal. And sometimes all you have to do is ask the person and you believe them. We believe a Muslim when he talks, right? As long as that Muslim has not shown signs of lying or public sinning. Okay. There are other things that you don't have to know. For example, if you're making Hajj or you're making Umrah and the leader says to you, during tawaf, reveal your right shoulder from the ihram. You don't have to have the proof for that. You don't need to know the evidence for that. You do it out of taqleed. Okay? You don't have to have the evidence for that. Is Rabi'atul Ra'i the founder of the Ahlul Ra'i school in fiqh? No, he has nothing to do with that. He's from Ahlul Hadith. And when he's called Rabi'atul Ra'i, it's not because he uses a lot of analogy. It's because when they're 2 opposing texts, he was the best in showing the way out of that. When there's, let's say, a hadith ahad and amal ahl Madina, he is the one who was best at showing how to reconcile the 2 seeming contradictory texts. Okay. MX says, repeatedly forcing yourself to be optimistic. Yes, you know how you do it? By physically saying it out loud. Okay. Anytime somebody says, for example, oh, this is going to be a disaster. No, immediately out loud say, no, it's going to be great. Negate it. And with yourself too. If your mind is drifting towards negativity, speak what is good. أَمَّا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِّثْ. With the bounty of your Lord, speak. Okay. I like what SR says here. You can't always help negative thoughts. Yeah, you can't control your thoughts, but you can control your actions, your words, what you utter. With your tongue out loud is in your control. And it will affect your heart. If you keep saying things are going to be great, we're going to be very successful, you change the state of your heart. And your state of your heart changes, you become optimistic and you can take action now. You can't take action when you're depressed. When you're depressed, you just want to sit on the couch. As Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyah said, why does Iblis want to make you sad? Because you sit down and do nothing. Iblis wants you good people to do nothing. He wants good people not to do anything. So he makes them sad and depressed. That's the depression that's negated in the Quran constantly as a bad thing that Iblis wants to put in your heart. So we want optimism. Okay? Optimism makes you want to get up and work. Jimmy Jetson says, I want to get back on track in my deen. I used to pray. I used to do adhkar. Now I find this very hard. Okay? I'll tell you what. Many, many people, Jimmy, this only happens to them because they're surrounded by negative people, negative in religion. Right? Look at your friends. Who you go home to. Ibadah, deen becomes hard, usually because people are pulling you down. Okay? Imagine now that you want to get wealthy. You go home to a bunch of people who by 8 p.m. they're packing it up. They're about to go to sleep right now. Why? Because they're waking up at 4 a.m., 4:30 a.m., 5 a.m. What are they going to do at 5 a.m.? They're going to work. They're going to try to find a new investment. They're going to try to find a new angle. Okay? You're going to be one of them soon, and you're going to be making money. Give it a year or two. Or you can find another group of roommates. At 8 a.m., at 8 p.m., that's when they start ordering the food. That's when their friends start coming over. That's when the lights start going on. That's when the video game consoles get taken out. Okay? That's where the hangout actually begins, and they finish up at 13, 4, or at 1, 2 a.m. Okay? You hang out with that group, you're going to be poor. Guarantee you. You will be a poor man. Because those are, have all the habits of poverty. Now, you may not even know that that's a habit of poverty. Yeah. Sleeping late, being physically unfit, waking up late, these are the habits of poverty. Okay? But taking care of your health, trying to learn about ways to make money, sleep early, wake up early, these are the habits of the rich. Not the rich, I should say, those who earned wealth. There's a big difference between the rich and those who earned wealth. Most rich people inherited wealth. They're fakes. Put them out of the equation. Those who produce wealth, okay, are those who take mentors. Take a mentor. Do you have a mentor? Okay, so in the same way that you understand this aspect of wealth, you take it in the deen. Who is, in your locality, who do you look up to in deen? Say, I need to hang out with that person. Well, you need to find 4 people and you be the 5th. Okay? And hang out with them. You'll be one of them soon. Okay? How long are fathers responsible for their daughters, says Rose Gold? Until she marries. So if she, for example, doesn't get married, for example, doesn't matter. You're 50 years old. Responsibility of her father. Until she gets married. Okay? But for the son, until that son can now work as independent. However, it's also, keep in mind there's a lot of fitna out there, so the father should let his son live with him in the house, better than to be single out on an apartment by himself and fall into some fitna. But he should start paying his dues. It's a good habit, right? It's a good habit. Take on responsibilities. Like you got your own insurance car, your own insurance. You're paying pay some rent to the house. Put some money in this bin right here, right? Zelle to this account, household account, to learn now to have some kind of responsibility rather than being a what do they call those guys? Like a leech, like somebody who lives off of other people. Yeah. We don't like to live off other people. Okay. How can I become a master of fiqh? Hang out with masters of fiqh and do what they tell you for 4 or 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, 10 years. Okay. Hang out with fuqaha, either online or in person. Do what they tell you. What if someone says they take the Maliki ruling to keep a dog in their apartment? That's not the Maliki ruling. It's not allowed. Many people think it is, but it's not allowed. Risala ibn Abi Zayd al-Qayrawani specifies we're not allowed to take a dog as a friendly pet in the house. You can take a dog as a shepherd dog. You can love him as much as you want. You can hug him and kiss him if you want, okay? Because his saliva is not najis. If he's a shepherd dog, if he's your guard dog, let's say I'm living in a bad area and I need a guard dog outside the house. outside the house. Let's say you are a guy, I love my dog so much, he's not going to come in the house. Fine. I'm going to build him the nicest shed and I'm going to heat it up for him. Okay? And I'm going to go and I'll clean the blankets out myself. That's up to you. I know what's that. But to have a dog in the home as a pet is forbidden because angels don't come into the house. Why do angels not come into the house? If you had a cockroach in your bed, you wouldn't go in the bed, right? Why? What is so inherently the issue with the exoskeleton of a cockroach? You just don't like it, right? If I tell you there's a little rat, okay, somewhere in the bed, are you going to come in the bed? No, of course not. You don't like, we human beings hate cockroaches by nature. Allah created us that way. If I told you that there's a bunny rabbit in the house, you're not going to care so much, right? It doesn't bother me. If I told you there's a cat in the bed, a kitten in the bed, a cat, I'm not going to be bothered. I'll sleep all night. But you tell me there's a rodent? No, it's a different story. Why? What's the difference? It's the same biological material. The shape, the smell, the habits make you disgusted. Likewise, malaika, whether you like it or not, they don't like dogs. I hate to break it to you, right? You love dogs, they don't. Okay? So, but we need them in the house. We want them in the house. All right? So because they're so important to be in the house as a Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ forbade us for having dogs in the house. It's in the Risala of Ibn Abi Zayd al-Qayrawani. So as a result of that, how do you bring the two together? No problem. You can have a shed. The dog never enters the house. But there's another thing too. It's forbidden for a Muslim to waste time merely playing with a dog. Now, you walk the dog, fine. Give the dog a hug, no problem. Take the dog maybe, to get some exercise, no problem. But to be playing with a dog, the Prophet ﷺ said you will lose 2 hills of your good deeds. Okay? Why? Wastage of time with the dog is discouraged. Okay? We should say it's discouraged. So you say spend all day with the dog, and now the dog has become such a bigger part of your life than a regular shepherd or a guard dog. You're now entering a realm of discouragement at this point. All right, so that's the answer to the dog. I personally, some dogs, I can understand why people love them so much, right? But we have a religion, and we have guidance, and we have to submit to it. He's not allowed to come in the house, and I'm not going to spend hours upon hours or even 30, 40, 50 minutes every single day with the dog, right? And the urine and the defecation of a dog is najis, okay? So be careful where he urinates because that's najis. It's not like a duck or a sheep or a goat where the defecation and urine of those herbivores is not najis. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Service dog, yes, you may have one. The home becomes a question at that point. I don't know. I mean, you don't need one. How many blind people in the world have existed without a blind dog, right? So keep it in the garage. Keep it have a nice shed in the garage, heated, everything, okay? But just don't bring him in the house, okay? And then what else about the dog? How about the depression dogs? No. That's not one of the things that's going to break the way that the rulings on these things. Aisha says, how would you advise a girl who was broken up with her fiance who was with her for 3 years and changed his mind the last week for continuing to marry her? Bring new guys into your life. I mean by that, your parents, your family should start suggesting new people. Let your mind be distracted from that guy. And don't chase around a guy who doesn't like you anymore. Okay? So try to find somebody try to distract your mind with other people. There are many, many men in the world. Okay? Listen, folks. Time's up. Time is up. Unfortunately, we got to run. We've been almost 2 hours streaming now. And unfortunately, we have to go. Adam Enzo, please answer the sister's question. Yes, that is Aisha's question about a woman. She basically got stood up by her fiance for 3 years. Why fiance for 3 years? Why would you be fiancés for 3 years? That's another example. Why didn't you get married earlier? Okay, maybe they have some situation. But that's not really the norm, by the way, to tell you the truth about it. This is one of the reasons, right? It's one of the reasons. This is a prime example of why engagements should not go this long. 1 year max, maybe because of some situation, circumstances, but you agreed to marry, so marry then, right? I agree to buy the car from you in 3 years. Well, something could happen. Change of heart. These terrible things happen. And anyway, it happened. Now there's no point in blaming after the fact. The sister says the parents didn't agree. Then how did you get engaged? It wasn't a real engagement then. It was a secret engagement. It was all funny business to begin with then, right? So the guy's parents didn't even know he was so quote unquote engaged. Oh, it's just funny business to begin with. That's why this stuff is not allowed in our religion. Thing is that a lot of youth, they like to follow their desires and do things. The elders then say, no, we're not allowed to do this. The youth don't know why, right? Now you know. This funny business always leads to bad things happening. Okay? So for the sister now, it's not me, it's my friend. Fine. Okay? She's saying, tell that sister now, okay, start distracting yourself with somebody else. All right? Distract yourself with somebody else. The hard side of me, the rational side of me wants to say, well, blame yourself. You got yourself in this situation. Actions have consequences, right? Actions have consequences. And you did this funny thing where 3 years you had this secret relationship with a guy. Maybe your parents knew, but his parents didn't know. Wait, engaged. Wouldn't the families be constantly having dinner together when they're engaged? Right? So you got yourself in this funny relationship and now it ended up badly. That's not the right way to do things. So, but the best way to clear your heart is there are other men out there. Okay. And even better than that, stronger than that, ask Allah Ta'ala to clear your heart. Okay. And recite Ya Kafi, Ya Kafi, Ya Kafi. The name, divine name Kafi means sufficient. He's enough for you. Ya Kafi, Ya Kafi. If you keep doing this, and you gotta trust me on this, hundreds upon thousands of times, eventually Allah will lead you to something that will fill your heart and that will suffice your heart from being so down and depressed. Okay. Do you recommend a student of knowledge from different madhabs study some Maliki madhab just to understand? Nah. The usul, yes. The rules, the usul, yes, but the actual rulings, no. Don't confuse yourself with rulings. The usul, yes. What's the Maliki opinion on music? It's all forbidden except for the drum during weddings. Okay. Does Allah have more than 99 names? The answer is yes. Yes, the answer is yes. What was the one? There's one more question I think I wanted to answer. What was that question? If one believes that Allah can't give you something even better than what's taken away from you, that's disrespectful. If there was khair, it would have happened. That's correct. What is a dog's saliva? Is it najis in the Hanafi school? He says yes. What is a good dua for protection while calling out oppressors? You know, don't be so reckless in calling out oppressors. It is good to call out oppressors, but some of us are in these cushy Western countries where we've never seen what it's like. They'll take your family, right? You think, you know, like these people are like Americans who have some kind of rule of law? They'll take your kids. These people are crazy, right? So be very cautious, you know, be very cautious. You want to go to UAE and then go on talking about bin Zayed? This is not Biden over there who can just get rocks hurled at him and he doesn't even know what's going on. This is not Trump who has limits by law. No, these people have no limits. This is the rule by decree. He's king. He's ruled by decree. Pick up the phone. Security, whatever, police agency, whatever they got, go arrest so-and-so. They're not going to say, do you have a warrant? Warrant? I'm the king here, right? I'm the king. It's ruled by decree in these countries. Be very cautious when you deal with MBS, MBZ. Okay? CC. Don't play games. It's we can play games when we're here in America. Right? In the old days. When they don't know you exist. Right? There was no Facebook. There was no WhatsApp. They don't know you exist. You talk all day about the presidents and no one knows you exist. And then you go visit those countries. No problem. And leave. They all know what's going on now. Every single one of us who has any possible account that is talking about these people, they know. Okay? And they speak English. It's not like the old days. Gaddafi doesn't speak English. Right? No, they all speak English. They all have people speak English. They're all in tech. Be careful what you get yourself into. Okay? Where do you get this hat? It's a custom made. It was really an accident the way it came out, to be honest with you. They're like the tight kufis on my head. There was one thing I needed to mention. I guess we're not going to get to it right now. I can't even remember what it was. There was a question here. I wanted to cover it before I left. Yeah.
What's the outro music? When are you going to reveal it?
We will make a video for that and put the whole thing on YouTube so people could listen to it. Yeah, no problem. 100%.
We want our share too.
Huh? And we're going to get our share too. But it was thanks to Sohaib Awan with his Turkish connections got us this the same people who made the Ertugrul make our outro. Right? And the new Salahuddin Ayyubi show. Those same people, they're the ones who made this. And we went through 3-4 renditions of it. And really the first one turned out to be the best one. Right? So it was really good. And we're probably going to use this for the intro too now. Okay. All right, folks. Jazakumullahu khairan. Barakallahu feekum, folks. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta. Nastaghfiruk wa natubu ilayk. Wal asr. Innal insana lafi khusr. إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.